100%. What do I think the odds are that people who are in charge of that decision ever admit that? 0%. I'm like, who would admit it? Like, we already know for a fact that the media can just disappear a story. Even if half of the country is talking about it all the time, they can just pretend it's fake.
Yeah, only one who's it's like the silent protector at this point. It's like Project Veritas being the only one to host people. And people, it's real. I didn't realize. Again, I keep realizing just how much the world conforms to my worldview. Sometimes I would accept things that were hostile to my worldview just because it felt like a reasonable thing to do, and then I find out that actually I didn't even need to do that. So it's just I keep finding out new things that are beneficial to me. People keep saying, "Oh yeah, James O'Keefe is like this. He's a serial liar. He makes up stories. He falsifies this." Did you know that Project Veritas has? I mean, I'm sure you do. Has a whole wall of people who have to retract these accusations. They have like Retracto the correction alpaca, which is like a stuffed toy they send to everybody who lies about them and has to take it back. He's got a song. It goes, Retracto the correction alpaca. Anyway, so people were saying that James O'Keefe paid this mailman $130,000 to say that there was ballot stuffing, and then it's like, no. The guy came to James O'Keefe, said there was ballot stuffing, lost his job, started a GoFundMe with James O'Keefe's help, which raised $130,000, and then GoFundMe canceled the GoFundMe. So he never even got the money. And somehow, just a completely innocent mistake, I'm sure, these people got everything completely topsy-turvy to have it such a James O'Keefe, like, hey, listen, say that you saw cheating, and I'll slip you this 100K-er.
As if you'd have to pay someone $100K to make up a lie like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have done it for $5. It's like, hey, here's $5,000. Just say this. I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever, sure.
Frankly, I would pay James O'Keefe for the opportunity to be on his show just to lie about the Democrats.
Yeah, and I still have to come up with a term for what you just said you did, where you said you actually adopted things that, like, you adopted positions that were wrong just because you felt like you needed to be more reasonable and you didn't know they were necessarily wrong.
Yeah.
I noticed this phenomena coming specifically out of people from Reason magazine, where people will have a correct opinion, like on a spectrum, right, of correct to incorrect. They will move themselves a couple notches further away from correct, even if they seem to know that they're actually making themselves less accurate, just to be like, well, I need to be, sort of reasonable. Like this need to move yourself towards to meet your opponent in the middle, even at the expense of saying things that you go, okay, I don't know whether A or B is true, but I'm going to lean against the one I think is true just because it will kind of bring me more towards my nemesis.
It feels a little bit too convenient to have the world be exact, even though the hallmark of having a correct worldview is that the world is the way you view it. But sometimes it just feels a little bit too convenient when, like, everything, maps out to the way you think it does.
Then you have to worry if you're just bullshitting yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So
because I'm sure that these, like Scott Adams had a tweet the other day. He's been great lately. I don't have Twitter, but I've been logging on to just his page. And he said something about, like, all the gullible Democrats who were convinced that the polls were all accurate are now convinced that there'll be no voter fraud found. He's like, okay, let's do this again. Mm-hmm. But the point is, these people, like, you might think that someone like that has had their worldview totally destroyed, but they haven't. Yeah. They still think that, Russia interfered in the last election. I asked a friend about this. I said, kind of smugly, I was like, oh, isn't it funny how Russia just, like, gave Trump the last election, but this time I guess they just didn't bother? And he goes, fucking without missing a beat, he just goes like, well, yeah, I mean, last time Russia did the whole leak thing, and this time it didn't look like they did anything, so I guess they didn't interfere this time. It's like, oh, yeah, well, look at that. Worldview saved. They must not have intervened this time because I haven't been told they have. So
yeah, the new story, like so as far as I can tell, the current Democratic narrative on Russiagate, like they've settled on it, is that the Russians used WikiLeaks to give DNC data to Roger Stone, who then gave it to Trump or whatever. That's their
to give accurate information to voters.
Yes, and that
ultimately is what it comes around to is that this dastardly plan to, I don't know why you have to use Russia to do this, but Russia hacked them and got true information which they released, and therefore this is wrong.
Yeah.
And therefore remember, I don't know if you remember, Adam Schiff was on Tucker, and he kept saying, our election was hacked. And then Tucker was like, oh, would you like to make the claim that the voting machines were hacked? And he goes, our election, our democracy was hacked. He's like, okay, well, that's not really a claim. So could you make a claim like the votes were changed from this guy to that guy? And he never did it. He never did it. But they still went on with this. And now we have to sit through this whole thing again. But the point is that the odds that this happened, I think, are like 100%. Yes. But the odds that who is going to, like, I see these Trump people seem to think that there's some teacher they can run to
they keep arguing it one-on-one, like trying to prove to like their neighbor or some guy the next county over.
They're trying to tattle on someone, but there's no one to tattle on. I don't think they understand that, like, this is like you go to your teacher and you say, I have proof that this kid is bullying me. And what's going to happen is the teacher is going to lock the door and punch you in the face. And they're on the side of the bully. They're not going to help you.
Yes.
It is that scene in The Shawshank Redemption where Tommy goes to the warden to tell him his information about how Andy is actually innocent. And the warden's like, are you sure you want to go with this? We got to be 100%. He's like, yes. And then what does the warden do? He fucking shoots him. And there goes all the information. Yeah. That's what's going to happen. They're going to go to the Supreme Court, and they think John Roberts is going to go, all right, let's admit that our sacred institution is totally bullshit and that our elections are fake. They're not going to admit that. Even Clarence Thomas is not going to admit that. They're all going to go there, and you know what they're going to say? They're going to sit down, and even if they saw all the information, and even if they believed that it proved that the election was fake, they would say, we can't let people know this because it would destroy the faith in the system.
It would be a clear and present danger. So there you go.
So we're going to have to noble lie this. But how easy would it be for them to convince themselves that the information wasn't good enough? They would say, to convince us that this election was fake, we'd have to have a really high standard, and it just doesn't quite meet that standard. And there's no way. There's no way. These fucking idiots think, oh, Amy Coney Barrett's she's gonna. Why would she do this? Why would she undermine the fucking system that she is a part of?
Who knows? And I just want to get back to this.
One guy who would even bring this up, and that's the guy they're trying to get rid of, because even the other Republicans know we can't have people poking around into these elections because they're all faked. And if they start looking into it, then all of us are in danger of getting in trouble because this routinely goes on. Everyone knows, I don't know if people remember this, but it was credibly said in 2000 and in 2004 that George Bush had those elections stolen. In Florida in 2000 and in Ohio in 2004. There were congressmen that produced a report about that, and that was considered a mainstream point to make. Because that's how these things work. I read, you'll love this, Peggy Noonan. You know Peggy Noonan?
Nope.
Peggy Noonan is a Wall Street Journal editorial writer she was a speechwriter for Reagan. And she's, a conservative, sensible voice at the Wall Street Journal. And she wrote an article that I have to find. I'm probably doing the Alex Jones thing where you mischaracterize it and you sensationalize it by accident. But the way I remember it was that she wrote something to the effect of, historians kind of understand now that JFK and Lyndon Johnson stole the 1960 election for Kennedy. And there were a lot of dead people voting in Illinois, and that's what flipped Illinois for Kennedy. And there's credible evidence that
probably did to shoot him anyway.
That Texas was stolen by Lyndon Johnson's people. But Nixon did the right thing by not pursuing those allegations because it was better for the country to just heal. Which, this is the way these people think. This is the way these people think is, yes, a criminal cabal fucking defrauded the electorate and the system and stole power in an effective coup. But it's better for everyone if we just pretend it didn't happen. That way we can all pretend that the system is good. And thereby we can make it good by pretending it's good. That's how they think. And when I read her say that, I said, oh, every one of these people thinks, which is why you could have a fucking you could have the data from the Dominion software system, and you could go right through it and show all the Supreme Court justices. Here is where 50 million votes were moved from Trump to Biden. And they'll go, yeah, that seems rock solid. But, let's put on our noble lie, guys, because we're here to protect the system.
Yeah, and you know what really convinces me that it's truly not worth talking one-on-one to people about this sort of thing? It's not just the fact that like every single mistake, typo, glitch, etc., only benefits Joe Biden. You could keep flipping coins over and over again, and it could just be heads, right? That's in theory could happen. Okay, if a person just wants to like take their gift horse and not question it, and you just don't, you don't want to hear bad things about your kid, your senile 77-year-old senator kid, right? Fine. But what got me really over the edge was when it's now like a conservative meme. It's where in Michigan, all those votes came and Joe Biden got 130,000 votes out of nowhere. Remember? And so you saw the curve and then the line just jump vertically and do it. And Republicans are like, okay, that's just obviously voter fraud. And Democrats tried to say, oh, there's nothing suspicious about that at all. Now, as it turns out, this is simply yet another innocent typo that okay, I don't remember the exact number, but we've all seen it.
130,000.
Yeah, then they were 130,000 votes.
No,
however,
that was a typo. It was only 50,000. It was fixed.
No, here's what happened. Joe Biden got like 15,781. I think that's the number, yeah. 15781. And then the person accidentally wrote 157810, right? So they gave him 10 times as many votes as he actually got. If you subtract that number from the real number. So if you subtract 15781 from 157810, that totals out to the exact 138,000 whatever votes that Joe Biden manifested out of thin air.
Yeah.
So that number was illegitimate. We knew it was illegitimate because it was unbelievable. And we were right not to believe it. And we were, apparently wrong to say it was fraud. It was an innocent mistake of many. But the point is, it's one thing if you don't want to believe that was like an act of malice or fraud. If you're like, well, innocent mistakes happen. If you can't even bring yourself to have said at the time when you were looking at it, that number is illegitimate, you can't talk to someone like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, because they waited until after it was proved to be a typo to even admit that it could have been fishy.
Exactly.
And then they go, oh, yeah, well, of course it was fishy because it was a typo, which we all know. But 10 minutes ago, they would have died before they admitted that there was anything weird about it.
Right. So someone like that is not a person, properly speaking. Like, that's a subhuman animal. Right? That is like something less than an ape. Like, a fucking ape can recognize patterns that obvious.
Here's what they will say with no data, because as far as I know, we have no exit polls. I guess we stopped doing those. That's not a thing anymore.
You can't trust them because something mail-in voting.
That used to be how we determined whether election results were what they were going to be. We don't do those this time, I guess. But here's what they have. They don't have like data or anything, but they have a neat little theory, just like the Russiagate thing. It's a theory, and it doesn't need information because it's like it's axiomatic, right? It's an a priori theory that, well, we know, right, that Trump told all his people to vote in person, so therefore anyone who wanted to vote for Trump voted. And Biden told all his people to stay home because COVID's dangerous. Therefore, anyone who voted by mail must have voted for Joe Biden. Therefore, it is not suspicious if I have had people tell me there is nothing suspicious about 90% or more of mail-in votes going to Biden, because we all know, just a priori, we just know that the Trump people don't believe in COVID and they all voted in person, and the Biden people all do and they all voted by mail. How do we know this? Because I just made it up to make sure that this makes sense. So therefore we know it. I don't have to prove it. What's the proof? The proof is the election results. So therefore, I had someone tell me this. Therefore, any votes that we count, this was like 2 days after Election Day, or the day after, they basically said to me, it would make perfect sense that every vote, almost every single vote we haven't counted yet, is a Joe Biden vote. because we know that the Joe Biden people all voted by mail. So here's the thing. If you believe that, then you just keep voting